When I look around for gaming PCs right now, I just see the prices keep going up and up and up. And that is not a good thing if you want to get into PC gaming, especially if you're on a budget. But have no fear, because today the Tech Yes Man is near with a PC that is going to get in gear. Oh dear. What are we in for? Well, let's have a look right here. We've got a Lenovo M93, and this is going to be the centerpiece of this build because you can pick these up, at least where I'm locally. There's one going on eBay right now for 150 Aussie dollars. Pay $15 extra, you get shipping, and that's got 8 gigabytes of RAM, a 500 gigabyte hard drive, an i5, a motherboard, and another important thing is it's got a power supply, which we are going to be utilizing since we want to keep the cost down on this build as much as possible. Now in my hand is one of these things that they call nowadays unobtainium, and that is a graphics card. This is the 1050 Ti 4GB. Now this year I've been going on this tangent of if you want to get into PC gaming, at least and not get too ripped off, because let's face it, right now on the market, you're going to be getting ripped off on any kind of graphics card, at least when we compare the prices to last year and the years before that. But at least when it comes to a GTX 1050 Ti, it's got a 4GB VRAM buffer, and I've been saying this since the start of this year, and that is graphics cards with 4GB of VRAM or less are actually much less desirable to cryptocurrency miners, which means the prices are going to be a bit better in correlation to cards with more than 4GB of VRAM. So what I'll do for you guys is pull up a list right now, and just in case you can't get a GTX 1050 Ti or they're too expensive where you are, then there are a few other alternatives. Take for instance the GTX 950. You can even get these on AliExpress. Even though 100 USD is traditionally expensive for a GTX 950, it's not that bad considering the prices of all the other graphics cards have gone through the roof. Though the last important part of this build is the case, of course. I'm going with something with some Ring LED fans because after this video, I will be reselling this PC to someone who's already booked up a PC from me. And the reason I go with LEDs is because a lot of people want to have LEDs. Now you can save a little bit more money on your case if you don't care about aesthetics. But for this case right here, it came in with the Ring LED fans included. It's got tempered glass on the side, and it only cost me 55 Aussie dollars. So it's actually not too bad value for money. However, let's pull up the full tally of what this build will set me back right here on the screen for you guys. And let's quickly build this thing up, because this isn't just your classical PC build where you got a standard ATX power supply and you're just gonna make things work from the get-go like a standard YouTube how to build a PC tutorial. This is a little bit different, so we're gonna work you guys through the steps if you wanna get something like this. And of course, in the end, you're gonna be saving some money. So let's get it on. Today's video is brought to you by SCD Keys, delivering you that retail single and user license key for only $12 after you use the coupon code BFTYC. That's right, this month only, you can get a 30% discount using that coupon and link in the description below. So going through our first step, since this is an OEM PC from Lenovo, aka Lenogo, we're gonna make this a go-ahead, so that makes it Liesco. We're gonna pull this thing apart, open this right here, and you can be a little bit, just if you're gonna be a bit forceful with it, make sure you you just be careful not to hurt yourself, because there can be some sharp edges and stuff. And in this case, the person I bought this off, I got this on a local deals hunt when I was in Sydney, and the person I bought it off didn't include the drives, so I had to add the drives in today to the price tally. But you can notice here that they've done something really weird that I've never seen before. They've pulled out a drive within the drive and left the casing behind. So I don't know how that's gonna fare for them, but what we're gonna do now, the main thing to be concerned about with the Lenovo PCs right here is that we're gonna be taking out this motherboard and the RAM and the CPU and the CPU cleaner, because we're gonna be cleaning these things up individually. But we're also gonna be removing this power supply here, because believe it or not, this power supply is actually not too bad, especially if we just wanna run something like a 1050 Ti. So we're gonna have roughly combined, it says here we're gonna have around 230 watts max combined. And honestly, with a 1050 Ti and a 4-core like this, our PC should be using max around 150 watts. So we're gonna get into the first stage right now, and that is just pulling these cables off and getting the whole core component here out of this shell, and then cleaning it down, and then getting all the rest of our parts ready. So let's get on to that. It's pretty much, you can do this pretty easy. Just get a screwdriver and then start removing all the necessary screws, which we'll show you guys right here. And there's our power supply removed, just with 3 screws, and also this little thingy right here that we have to press down and take it out. But let's start taking out the motherboard now. But one thing I like to do, and one thing you'll need with the Lenovo's, is you'll need to remove the temperature sensor right here. Because if you don't have this installed, even if you're changing it over to a new case, then what'll happen is the fan will just start spinning at full throttle and it'll sound very loud. So do make sure that you remove this little temperature sensor here and bring this over to the next case that you're going to use. In this case, it's our TR1100. But after this, we're just going to take out all these screws right here, and then the board should just pretty much pop out. And we also got some free SATA cables as well. Now, since we're going to be reusing the power supply, it's important to take this one right out here, this 4-pin black connector, which powers the SATA drives from the motherboard itself. So this will give us access to power our SSD and our hard drive. So we do have to keep this. Now you see me pull this out here. This is an 80mm fan and also an extra couple of screws and a bracket. Even though we don't need this in today's build, I'm actually going to pull this out because that's one thing that I do before I chuck out cases, is anything that I can salvage and potentially use in a future build, then I take advantage of that. And that's, especially if you're getting into the world of PC building and gaming, then you might want to do the same thing, because you never know when this stuff can come in handy in the future. And the last component to remove is our I/O shield, which we've also got to quickly bend these little clips up here on this short side, so that'll then fit inside an ATX case absolutely fine. And now the next step that I love to do personally, and this is what we call tech loving, and that is clean down these used PC parts. Now this step, admittedly, it is optional, so if you don't have any of this stuff right here and you just can't afford it, or you time strapped or whatnot, then on a low powered build like this, it generally is optional, because say for instance a GTX 1050 Ti is generally not going to put out a whole lot of heat, and same with a 4-core i5 4th gen. They're not going to be hot running parts, so that generally over time the thermal paste connection is still going to hold up absolutely fine. But it's one thing that I love to do, because I just love to clean things up, and if I'm selling a PC, I like to make sure it's just running at 100% the best it can be. And not only that, we're just going to make the parts look like they are brandy new. So we're just gonna get into this, guys, with first things first. We're gonna use an alcohol wipe, but we're gonna take the coolers apart off the CPU cooler and also the GPU, and then start the cleaning. And after that beautiful session of tech, yes, loving, we have got some parts that look like they're brand new. They're going to pretty much perform even better than they were when they were brand new because we're using some better thermal paste. But what we're doing now is this is a micro ATX case. So we do have to be careful in that we're mounting the power supply down the bottom. Now, if you're using a bigger ATX case, this probably won't work. You'll probably have to get a different power supply and also get a Lenovo adapter to 24 pin. So if you're after that route and you want to use a bigger case, then I'll put some links in the description below for you guys. But we're gonna mount this power supply in a little bit of a weird way and use this stock power supply to save some money. And it's gonna be a little bit weird because the power supply is gonna be showing half out because this isn't a standard ATX power supply, but we still wanna make sure it's firm in that when we're connecting the power supply connector, things aren't moving around. So we're gonna get onto that right now. So our preliminary build is finished, and we did have to get through a couple of hurdles. This CPU 4-pin right up here literally just fit. Any more distance between this and the power supply, and we would have needed an extender. And one more thing is the front panel pinout on a Lenovo M93 is different from a standard H81 motherboard from the likes of Asus or Gigabyte or ASRock or something like that. So those are the two things we had to be careful of. Another thing is too, if this boots up, we're gonna try and boot this up and see if we can get a signal out of this thing after we plug our HDMI cable in. And with everything plugged up, we now have a signal, but you may notice that there's no LED fans that are running here. And that's because we have these plugged up on Molex connections, and we've got very limited connections with our power supply. So I'm gonna try and figure out how I can get around that and see if we can get that working. So the soldering has finished, and we've now got a PC that is booting absolutely fine. It's actually pretty quiet and looks pretty mint. But even better news is that we've installed our custom version of Windows 10, which you guys have been requesting we do a Windows 10 Lite. So there's gonna be a dedicated video on that coming up soon on the channel, so make sure you stay tuned. But in the meantime, when we boot up Windows, we can see that this is already working some magic, where the default usage of RAM being used is only 1 gigabyte versus Windows 10 default install, which can go up to like 2 gigabytes. And since we've only got 8 gigabytes of RAM in this build, it's important to micromanage as much as we can to get the best FPS possible. But speaking of FPS, let's boot into the first game. So we're now playing GTA 5 on our blue box here, and this is on 8 gigabytes of RAM on a 4-core 4th gen with a GTX 1050 Ti. Like, look at those 1%, 0.1% lows. Usually when I benchmark GTA 5, I'm benchmarking it for around 30 seconds at a time. But this is something different. Like, I've been benchmarking this for quite a while now, and the 1% and 0.1% lows are actually phenomenal. So this, I'm going to credit that mostly to the Windows install and cutting out all the crap. You're getting a really smooth gaming experience when you do this. And so yeah, like absolutely amazed. Let's of course, let's move on to the next game now and see what we can do. But in terms of GTA 5, we can see the average FPS here as well at 1080p on medium settings is getting around 113 average FPS. So really good. Just trying to get this helicopter too. Oh, come on. You're taking bullets here, man. There we go. Oh. So running through a heap of different tests here on Fortnite, I actually found some interesting results, and that was to the point where if you're on a 4th gen 4 core, that is, say for instance, the i5-4440 that we're using here today, then you want to actually cap this game at 120 FPS. And that just stops the 1% lows from becoming relatively bad. Because when we have our frames uncapped, and even if we cap them at 62, we seem to get the 1% lows jittering down into under the 20 realm, which if you're playing this game competitively, it's going to affect your FPS and it's going to get annoying, especially if you're in a clutch play and you need to get the W. Though as opposed to the 8 gigabytes of RAM, I think it would be more desirable if you're playing Fortnite competitively to have 16 gigabytes of RAM. But if you're on this setup with 8 gigabytes of RAM and that's all you can afford at the moment, and you want to get the most smoothest gameplay, then definitely think about capping your FPS at 120 if you're on a 4-core, 4-threaded CPU. That seems to be giving us the best results in terms of these 1% and 0.1% lows, at least from all the testing I did here. So not too bad, not too shabby. And after benchmarking those 3 games at 1080p, I was actually blown away by mainly the Windows 10 install and everything that went on after we tuned this PC up. And I mean, Fortnite was showing us that the 1% and 0.1% lows could be a little bit more desirable, especially the 0.1% lows. But besides that, we did get around that with that 120 FPS limit. And then when it came to GTA 5, and also Valorant, the FPS was extremely impressive. So if you want to get into PC gaming and you're on a budget, and regardless of what's going on out there at the moment, if you can look around and get together those deals that many people aren't looking for, and if you also even want to have a bit of bling in your build, then you can definitely still do that on a budget. Don't let all the prices of all this new RTX 3000 stuff deter you from getting into PC gaming. Something like this with the GTX 1050 Ti and the 4-core 4th gen Haswell will still do absolutely fine for playing some of the most popular games that people are actually playing online, rather than some of these latest and greatest titles, for instance like Cyberpunk, that start off really well, they need really high-end hardware, they cost a lot of money, but then after you finish the game, you I've personally lost interest, for instance, in Cyberpunk after I finished the game. Don't get me wrong, it was a very exciting game, but I think a lot of games like GTA 5 and also Valorant and also Fortnite have a lot more long-term playability than games like Cyberpunk. And a PC like this, although it probably won't play Cyberpunk 2077 that well, it will play all those other games extremely well, as you saw with the FPS here. Now, of course, I did do a few little things to get this PC working 100%. For instance, I did have to solder in a connection to get these 4 LED ring fans working, but that was because we used the stock power supply. So if you do have a little bit of extra money, you can get a Lenovo 14-pin adapter to an ATX power supply, and that will give you a lot more connections. If you are on a budget, you have a soldering iron, and you are feeling a little bit adventurous, then you can make something like this work absolutely fine. Now, if you do get a graphics card and you want to use the budget power supply like the Lenovo one included, then make sure you don't go for anything more than a single 6-pin connector on board, because then you'll either have to splice in a wire or you'll have to connect, say, a SATA to 6-pin connector and maybe use a single 480GB SSD, because power supplies are a little bit expensive, and you don't really need a new power supply if you're going with a low-powered GPU, especially in this case, since we went with a 1050 Ti, the included 230-watt power supply is absolutely fine for this whole build here. And as we saw with those temperatures, even a budget case like this with the 4 mediocre fans, even though they look nice, they don't do a great job of cooling. Even these 4 fans kept the CPU and the GPU under 70 degrees at all times. It was actually kind of like low 60s when I was playing the game. And the good thing about that is that this PC right here is actually really quiet. And so I've got a game loaded up in the background on the menu screen, and the GPU and CPU are pretty loaded up, and this is as loud as it gets. So something like this is gonna check all those boxes. It's coming in with a cheap price point, it's also got the price performance, and it's coming in with a bling. This one, in my opinion, is an absolute winner considering the climate of PC gaming at the moment, especially GPUs. But if you guys enjoyed this one, then be sure to hit that like button for us. Also, let us know in the comment section below what you think of something like this. I'll put a heap of different links below, so if you guys want to look for something like a 4th gen Lenovo and do exactly what I did here, and then find a GPU, and then put in your own drive, and then maybe a budget case, then I'll make that happen down in the description below. Anyway guys, we got the question of the day here, which comes from Viraj Patel, and they ask, Tech Yes Mystery, wasn't $479 the MSRP? And they're referring to the recent RX 6700 XT GPU review that we did, where in my initial review I said it was $429, and that was actually based off a phone call. I'm not gonna say who it was, but I got told on the phone it was $429 because my emails are just, like, a lot of the times I don't have time to check my emails because they're just like, I got a lot of spam in them. So I thought $429 was the go, and I went ahead with that in the review. And I believe in a perfect world, with all this printed money not circulating and cryptocurrencies not being so high, and therefore the demand for GPUs not being so high, I believe the card like the 6700 XT would actually fall more closer to $429 than $479. But Tech Yes Mystery indeed, my guy. And who knows the real answer to that one, because after that I got told it was $479. But let us know in the comments what you guys think. You think it was meant to be $429 or $479? Love reading those thoughts and opinions as always, and do let us know again what you think about this little budget box right here. I don't know why I'm so proud of it. I don't know what happened. This thing, I'm absolutely loving it. It's got that budget, it's got that Tech Yes vibe. Something that's been missing a bit lately. It's got that whole shabam going on. It's got it all. And the blue ring LED fans. Who doesn't want something like this for that price performance aesthetic? We're gonna put 2 slashes in there, price performance aesthetic. That's what's going on now, 2021, new meta. And also, if you guys are enjoying the metas and you've stayed this far and you want to see the tech content the moment it drops, be sure to hit that sub button, ring that bell, and I'll catch you in another one very soon. Peace out for now. Bye.